And tonight we are going to be talking about the state of higher education in Belize. The state of higher education in Belize. As J. Alexander Bennett said, right, a formal and systemic approach to higher education in Belize had its origins around 1979 with the formation of the Belize College of Arts, Science and Technology, BELCAS. Though I must quickly add that higher education institutions in Belize existed long before that period. Higher education institutions like the Belize Teachers College, the Bliss School of Nursing, the Belize College of Agriculture, the Belize Technical College, St. John's College Sixth Form, Wesley College Sixth Form, St. Michael's College Sixth Form, to name a few, were in existence long before 1979. But they were singular, independent institutions with their own unique, singular missions and visions, as opposed to being a part of a national higher education system. Since, as J. Alexander Bennett points out, such a system simply did not exist prior to that period. So for the purposes of our conversation this evening, we would like to look at the evolution of higher education in Belize over the past 40 or so years and try to begin a discussion on this particular question. How robust is the higher education system in Belize as it exists today? And here with us this evening to initiate this discussion are three very prominent Belizean women who are all having very distinguished careers in higher education in Belize. This threesome includes Dr. Cynthia Eve Aird, the provost of Galen University, Dr. Karen Martinez, the dean of Ecumenical Junior College, and the highly polished diamond and a very good friend of mine, Dr. Cynthia Thompson Gillett, current chairman of the Belize Board of Teacher Education. So welcome, ladies, and thanks for agreeing to participate in this evening's conversation. So we would like to begin by asking you to very briefly introduce yourselves to our audience. We'd like to start with my boss, the provost, Dr. Aird, followed by Dr. Martinez, and then followed by Dr. Thompson. Dr. Aird? You're muted,
Yes,
Dr. Aird.
I'm unmuted now. Thank you very much, Dr. Barrow. As Dr. Barrow indicated, my name is Eve Aird, and I am currently the provost of Galen University. I have enjoyed, I think, a 30-year career in higher education, having joined the University College of Belize on the 4th of January in 1990. And here I am, 100 years later, being the provost of Galen University, and I hope to retire from this institution in about 5 or 6 years. Over the course of my career, I have worked at UCB, of course, and then the University of Belize. Then I came to Galen University in 2003, where I was the first Belizean instructor And in 2008, I left Galen to become the president and the principal of Sacred Heart College, and I remained there until November 30th, 2014, when I left Sacred Heart to return to Galen University as the provost. Over my years, especially since the by 2003 joining of Galen University, um, I have served as the chair of ATLIB for about 6 years, 3 terms, and I was the Belize co-chair of the Consortium on Belize Education Corporation for 3 terms, 6 years. And I've also served for just about the same period length of time as the ATLIB representative to the Belize Board of Teacher Education. And during my service on that board, as the ATLIB representative, I was at one point time or the other the vice chair of the board. I did my doctoral dissertation on the evolution of tertiary education in Belize. That's me.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Aird, for that background, and we're certainly going to be leaning on your expertise in that area. Dr. Martinez, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I am Karen Martinez, presently the Dean of Stann Creek Ecumenical Junior College. I've been the Dean since 2012. I have been in education at the tertiary level since 2003. My interest is college success. I have come to realize that working at this level is very strategic. So tonight, I am so glad that I get this opportunity to talk about what I love. I want to see higher education in Belize improve. And there is no other time than now to start the talk.
Well, thank you very much, Ms. Karen. From 2003 until now, 19 years in higher education.
Yes.
Dr. Thompson, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thank you very much, Dr. Barrow. Good evening, everyone. I am Cynthia Gillett Thompson. Gillett, Gillett is my maiden name. All right. I began teaching as an elementary school teacher way back, just immediately after high school, way back in the 1960s. And subsequent to that, I went to the Teachers College, got my trained teacher's diploma, went back into the classroom, and then went to be a lecturer at the Belize Teachers College. Years after that, I became the vice principal and then the principal at the college. In 2000, when the Teachers College merged with other institutions to form the University of Belize, I became the first dean of the Faculty of Education at UB, and I was there for 3 years, and then I left to do doctoral studies. I was out for 5 years, and then I came back to Belize and served as the assistant provost at the university, and I did that from 2009 up until 2018. I guess during my time at the Teachers College and during my time at UB, I also served on the Consortium for Belize Educational Corporation, both as co-chair and as secretary for quite a while, back in the period when there were almost all males except for two of us. And I'm retired now, officially retired, but I was asked to serve as the chair of the Belize Board for Teacher Education late last year. So that's what I'm currently doing, and I'm enjoying being at home helping my grandchildren, but at the same time keeping myself grounded in what's happening around me in education.
Well, thank you very much. Great, right? Now that we know a little more about each of you, we would like to get into the substance of today's discussion by asking you to share your views on the following questions. We want to start with Dr. Aird. Dr. Aird, can you share your views on what constitute a higher education system, especially from the perspective of governance structures that must be in place to ensure the legitimacy of such a system. And can you tell us how far along we are in Belize in having such structures fully in place?
In order for me to, I would like to share a slide to help me answer your question, your extremely thoughtful question, I think, a deep question. So I would like to share a slide with you right now. And let me see if I can remember how to do that. You got it?
Yes, we're seeing it.
Okay. This is a slide from a presentation that I made at a recent Quebec conference held at John Paul Junior College's hosting of the winter conference in February. And the things that the bullets that I have on this slide represent an argument that I have made over the many years that I have been involved in higher education leadership since 2003. When Galen University became a member of ATLIB in October 2003, shortly after that, the then assistant or acting director of tertiary education of the Ministry of Education, the great Joey Bilal, asked ATLIB to assist the ministry in adopting the rules and regulations for elementary and secondary schools to the tertiary system. And ATLIB readily accepted that challenge, and we spent many, many, many years working on these rules and regulations. The tertiary education in Belize, in terms of a national governance structure, we don't really have it. At this point, what we do in tertiary education is loosely governed by the existing rules for education, which I think they were revised in 2010. But there isn't anything that speaks specifically to tertiary education other than the Act for the Belize Board of Teacher Education, or the law for Belize Board of Teacher Education, which requires all teacher education institutions and all the programs that they offer to be submitted for approval by that board. So in my view, and I believe that this view is shared by the members of ATLIB, if we are to have a united structure, a governance structure for tertiary education, we need to have legislation. We need to have legislation that specifies what tertiary education or higher education is in Belize, and we use the terms tertiary education and higher education interchangeably. We need to have an agreed upon definitions of what the programs are, courses, and so on, what a faculty pathway and so on. We need to have some rules that speak to how higher education institutions are born and how they are financed. Right now, John Paul down the road, or Peter Jones, or whoever could decide, I want to open up another junior college, or I want to open a university. And there isn't anything that really would guide that person and on what must be done to open an institution. There isn't anything right now that says that speaks to the quality of the programs that we offer, and that there isn't any rule that guides how programs are going to be funded. So from ATLIB's perspective, when we began to work with the Ministry of Education on this back in 2004, 2005, somewhere around then, We took those rules and we adapted it, and we were very hard on ourselves. We wanted more in the rules and regulations than the ministry was requiring of us. We also felt that apart from the legislation, that we need to have a higher education commission that oversees higher education in Belize. Right now, we have, I think, maybe a one-person office at the Ministry of Education that over that provides the oversight for tertiary or higher education in Belize. We feel that there ought to be a higher education commission that that speaks to the organization of higher education in Belize, what it ought to be doing, the relationship, the interrelationships amongst institutions, and so on. And then there ought to be a higher education policy that speaks to how the institutions will be funded, how programs are to be developed, and so on. And last but certainly not least, when and in 2004, the Ministry of Education submitted the bill for the National Accreditation Council to the House. That was legislated somewhere in late 2004, I believe, where, for the National Accreditation Council to be established. It is now 2022 and has yet to be established. CARICOM, the heads of government, had agreed that all member institutions and member countries, including Belize, would establish their national accreditation councils, and these bodies were supposed to play a significant role in the movement of professionals around CARICOM regions within, as part of the CARICOM single market economy. I am happy to note, to respond to your question, Dr. Barrow, as to say, in which you ask, how far are we along to having this kind of governance structure? I am happy to note that the current government has all of these elements as part of their planned activities, their planned development of the of a national higher education system. I think it's long past due. I've spoken on this at several in several different forums. This is long past due. I'm happy to note that it is part of the plan at this point. There was something else I wanted to say, but I've forgotten it. But even in the tertiary rules and regulations, when ATLIB developed these, we actually spoke to the kinds of career pathways and what faculty who enter the tertiary classroom, whether they were teaching at the junior college, whether they were teaching at UB, because the National University was a part of the conversation, whether they're teaching at Galen University, that we spoke to the kinds of qualifications that faculty should have when they enter the system, and we created a promotional pathway, a career pathway for faculty. We actually spoke to the pay scales that a teacher working at this level should have. And research was an important element of that career pathway, that somebody who wanted to be promoted from one level to the other, they should begin to do research. And we actually defined the different kinds of research or scholarly activity that faculty could engage in. We were hard on ourselves. At one point, we were being asked that faculty at this level should be licensed to teach in the junior college classroom. And we said, no, we would prefer to go the pathway of accreditation, because accreditation would place a heavier burden, a heavier obligations on the part of institutions to assure the quality of programs that we offer, that the programs would have to be approved, they would have to be developed according to certain standards. The Accreditation Council will establish national standards, and so on. The tertiary rules and regulations actually spoke to the kind of governance within institutions. Right now we have boards of governors. For the most part, most junior colleges, except for two, I think, most junior colleges in Belize share a board of governors or a management team. with their sister institutions, the high schools. The tertiary rules and regulations speak to specific rules that roles that the boards must play, and it requires that there's oversight, especially when it is linked with that linked with the accreditation council. Right now, I don't know that there's any oversight that boards of governors have at their institutions. So, but I am happy, as I said, I'm happy to note that the current government of Belize has all of this on their agenda, and I look forward to ATLIB's participation with the cooperation with the ministry in bringing all of this to fruition. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Aird. And it is good to know too that the ministry has plans, that they have planned their work. So let's just hope that they now work their plan, so that we are not here down the road
Yes.
2 years, 3 years,
I will.
5 more years, and
I have faith. I have faith that it will happen. We have to allow that we're coming out of a pandemic, and so we look forward to this happening over the next 3 or 4 years.
oh, beautiful. All right. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Thompson. We talked about, and Dr. Aird hinted to this, this whole matter of quality. And I know that you have served in the higher education sector at many levels. Lecturer, as you have indicated, you were administrator, you were manager, and eventually leader. The question is, what, in your view, are some of the quality issues? Quality issues. Because I know that this is one of your major concerns. Quality issues facing the higher education sector in Belize.
Thank you, Dr. Barrow. The whole issue of quality, I think Eve pointed, or in her presentation just now, Eve pointed out some of the areas where we have faltered, some of the areas I think where we have made gains. When you look at higher ed from way back, as you mentioned, what Mr. Bennett, you quoted Mr. Bennett. I believe that one of the statements Mr. Bennett made, I don't recall the exact quotation that you have, but a point that he made, and I wrote it down here, that everything was singular, meaning that the institutions that as the tertiary institutions or higher ed institutions, as they were established, operate and continue to operate as singular bodies, sort of in silos. And in my view, that has an impact on quality. And I will look at quality in terms of output from those institutions. So we have students graduating from all of these institutions. We have, I think, right now about 10 junior colleges. We have students graduating from programs at all of these institutions. We have students graduating from the university systems now. And let me just mention that at UB, you have both associates and bachelor's and master's degrees. At Galen, I think you have bachelor's, master's. I don't know if you do associates, but I'm sure there may be some certificates and so on. But we look at the quality of the graduates. When you look at accreditation, I recall the famous Errol Miller used to talk about looking at the output. So we used to say, oh, that person is a graduate of X institution. You're a UWI graduate, or you're a graduate from Harvard, you're a graduate. And that they came to that based on the performance of the output from those institutions. So how do we check on the quality? We generally check on the quality of our graduates from the employers, right? And we hear of back and forth. We hear from our employers how our students are performing there. In order for us to be able to say whether or not the programs are producing the kinds of graduates that we want, we have to then look at the programs, the quality of the programs, and the whole quality assurance system for our programs. as Eve pointed out just now, the teacher education system in higher ed has a kind of governance structure that is attempting, I have to say, at ensuring quality there. Because as far as I'm aware, there are standards governing the teachers in the system, the school system. But in development, I understand, is standards that will govern the teacher educators in the program, and standards that govern the academic institutions offering teacher education program. So there is, I think, work in ongoing that is looking at how we can address the quality issues within higher ed that will impact the secondary schools, that will impact the elementary schools, early childhood, preschools, and so on. So if I look at it in terms of the output, the graduates of the program, I look at it in terms of the program themselves. I think one of the things we have to work hard at in the coming years is the development of a system that ensures that we don't have it in pockets, but that whatever happens is systematic. Like, for example, a student graduates from EJC, Karen, and goes to UB or goes to Galen or goes to UWI. Is that a seamless movement? What system is in place? Now, that addresses governance, but sometimes decisions are made because you say, oh, well, certain things were not in place that ensure the quality of the graduates and the movement from one institution to the other. If we set up a seamless system, then those things, I think, will be taken care of. I want also to look at the quality assurance, and I will give kudos to the institutions. EJC, I know, did some work, and I think Sacred Heart also did some work in terms of trying to the whole bit the quality assurance of their programs. But as Mr. Bennett pointed out, it is institution doing their own thing and not a systematic approach to doing this. So yes, we have AtLib, and I think some of this comes out of AtLib. It comes out of our participation in Quebec. But is there, and when I spoke to Eve earlier on about AtLib and the entity being in law, established in law, and as far as I'm aware, participation in AtLib is voluntary. So if AtLib meets and AtLib makes a decision, how does that decision impact the institutions that are members of AtLib, right? In my view, AtLib is an organization that has tremendous potential, right, within the higher ed system and the potential to ensure quality. However, we have been, I think in Belize, we have placed a lot of emphasis on our elementary and more so elementary than on the secondary system, and to the detriment sometimes of higher ed. And higher education is the driving force, for those two levels. So it's sort of I don't want to say chicken and egg, but if we don't address the quality issues at higher ed, then what will happen in the lower levels will continue to happen. I want to look at the pandemic and quality. And it is showing to us now that yes, the pandemic hit us hard health-wise, and it hit us hard in the education sector where we had classes taught online, parents being involved. You're sending packages to the parents, but who taught the parents how to teach those topics to their children? Who's monitoring those children at home? I mean, I have two small grandchildren, and I have seen how being online impacts them, and I've seen the benefits of, and I mean, they are wonderful with technology right now. But how much of what they are doing right now is helping them and moving them along? So for me, the pandemic, in terms of looking at instruction, online instruction, I don't think we can run away from online instruction. What we need to improve online instruction and make it work and make our students benefit from it. Now, Karen will jump into access, but online instruction and access, that's another way to go. Online instruction and quality, we have to look at the quality of delivery. We have to look at those people who graduate mainly from the online programs and how they're performing within the systems. We have to pay attention, I think, to making the system work collaboratively. How are our institutions working hand in hand to make sure that the products of our institution can stand up anywhere at all right? So in my view, then there is potential. There are lots of potential out there, and in my view, lots of opportunities. But we have to harness the expertise that we have available and set up the systems and the structures to make sure that whatever we are delivering to our students out there comes at the best quality. Meaning that I'm looking at the best instructors, I'm looking at the best resources to use, and so on. We don't track our graduates to know how they are doing. There are analytics, there are the certain technological tools that can help us to find where our graduates are, to monitor what kind of, how they're performing in industry and other institutions, that can feed back into how we change our programs, whether we add a program or whether we remove a program. How long have we been hearing of programs run at some of the institutions over and over and over again? Are those really making an impact in industry? Are they really making an impact on our students? Are our students able to move on? I am sure that they do, because quite a number of our students have moved on to our Quebec institutions and to other opportunities that have opened up in Asia and in parts of Europe and even down to Australia. Our people have embraced a lot of the opportunities that are available to them. But if it's not available here, we have to prepare them here so that when they move out, they can move out confident that they can build on what they got here. So for me, I think that in terms of quality, we have work to do, but we have made gains. I have seen higher ed grow in the years of education, but we have to harness the resources that we have right now, meaning human resource, material resource, financial resource. I mean, we can get into the whole financing of higher ed. We have to harness what we have and work together. Collaboration, I think, is key.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Thompson, in explaining those quality dynamics associated with higher education. She constantly kept saying, making reference to opportunities, and potential. There's potential, there are opportunities. And so, Dr. Martinez, I'd like to turn to you now to ask, essentially, I know that you, like Dr. Aird and Dr. Thompson, you are in the trenches now, so you know of those opportunities in higher education, right? You running the Ecumenical Junior College, right?
Yes.
Now, where are we though with people taking advantage of these opportunities? This whole matter of the equity of access in higher education. The opportunities, they're there, very clearly articulated by Dr. Thompson, right? So what are some of the challenges that prospective students have with accessing higher education in Belize? Dr.
Okay.
Martinez?
Good evening again. First of all, I need to provide the perspective I hold about what higher education should be. I believe that higher education should be the pulse of the community within which it exists. So higher education should be determining what happens within a community. I also believe that while doing that, it should be able to improve the human conditions. Likewise, it should help to guide from it operating within its community. It should be able to guide national development. And not to forget, it also need to ensure that the adaptability of whatever it is happening within, it must be adaptable to change. So from what I am hearing from Dr. Aird and Dr. Thompson, we are discussing the cumulative effect of many of the changes that our higher education system has gone through. And we are reflecting at whether these things that we are seeing are still relevant or whether they need revisiting. I believe that when higher education started in the country, based on its phases in history, I heard Dr. Thompson. I usually love listening to her relating what higher education was, even before I got into it. Dr. Aird likewise. It was fit for the purpose it was intended for then. Based on what I read, it started off as a mechanism for some level of control, and later on it is used to drive policy agenda. But as time goes by, we are seeing many changes, as already mentioned. And from my part, since I'm talking more about the students, I'm seeing a lot of societal expectation on a whole that have changed. Our students are looking for solutions now. We like to dub them as the instant gratification society. And we are also seeing a change in workplace, their expectations, their requirements. They are more focused on information and knowledge-based kind of jobs. So access for our students and also equity. But before we even go there, like we can also talk about some of the things that are contributing to the changes we are seeing, this instant gratification society and also the demands of the workplace. We are operating now in a highly complex and competitive globalized world. And the technology has increased the reach of higher education, even if we were not really expecting it. So technology allows for access anytime, anywhere. Though that is good, though as Dr. Thompson said, that is a positive, or we can see the positive there. I have learned from my experience as an administrator at Ecumenical Junior College that yes, the 2 years with COVID had allowed us to see potentials in what we had to go through, that sudden rush to go online. We now have reached an area where we should have reached long time ago, embracing technology. But within that, it has limited access to the already marginalized group of students in our country. We cannot, as higher education stakeholders, play down the fact that not all of our students have access to this that we are now seeing as normal. So everybody has a cell phone, we would say. Everybody has technology, we would say. But we have to go down to the bottom to recognize that they may have a cell phone, but it might not be enough. Like it might not have the capability that requires them to engage competitively with their peers. So issue of access. We also have students who do not live in the vicinity where they have the technology that we are pushing, or we need to push based on like trying to be a part of what is going on in the world. So access is very important for us because we have to ensure that in pushing for change, we need to be mindful of in whose interests. The interests at the end of the day are the students. And if they are not getting that access to quality education, affordable education, the relevant education, the quality education, then we still will be operating, and a few years later, we'll be asking about governance again. We'll be asking about quality. We'll be asking about, are we making smart choices? So what I'm looking at here is we are living in a more socially networked global environment. So our internal foundations, as we build in structure, as we look at all the different things that we know so well, must be part of higher education, which I will call the formal aspect of it. We need now to give attention to the informal part. And we may ask, what is the informal part? The informal part is that social relationship that is so needed for engagement, for relationship, for building social capital. I have learned also that we can have structure in place, but if the relationship is not conducive, learning may not take place, which is part of our challenge with some, we can say, of our faculty in some cases. The structure might be there, but we need to reach down to where our students are. Those who are deep down, for example, in the villages in the Stann Creek district. From my part, when you pass, like, let's say, mile 17, we have some students who have no access to technology. I have heard stories where my students have to go by the roadside to do their assignments. So we have to make sure that in the process of building structure, we need to also create that informal, work on that compassion, work on that heart that I always mention in my speech to anybody who listened to me talking about college success, to that hand that we have to render, that assistance. And in order to be able to kind of play between the formal and informal, I am saying to all of us is that we need some planned chaos as we move forward. As we talk about all the changes we need some aspect of planned chaos, or I would also say bounded instability. We have to, like Dr. Barrow, you are good at actually always forcing people to think beyond just the now. So in higher education, we need that planned chaos. Scenarios that move us out of thinking at the status quo, where we are most comfortable. So as we do that, we continue to feed, yes, the formal aspect. We focus on order and stability, but we also need to look at network of contacts, not only inside of our institution and locally in our country, but we also need to do that outside the boundaries of our local environment. And to end my part here, there is a need for change. And while we push and talk about technology, because after COVID, we are talking about change, about in terms of technology, we have to realize that behind the technology are those students who are already marginalized. So our plan for higher education need to take them into consideration. And we have to be more responsive to their needs. And as we plan for them, we also need to create new markets for them so that they can access local and also abroad. And since we are preparing them also to go into the job field, we need to make sure we have direct public involvement and investment in the education that we are offering to them as we do so. And we need to make sure that we have strategic priorities. And those priorities should be actually meeting the need of the environment where our students are living. And I also, from my end, would discourage, we need to get rid actually of discursive dominance, where one group is determining what happens to the other group. I will end by saying that our students are the priority of the education system. It's in their interest. So we now also need to look at an opportunity where they join the discourse, and not only a group of persons who normally would be planning for them without them be part of it. And I'm ending by saying that yes, we are looking at efficient ways, but we need to look at efficient ways effectively, because the efficient will look at how well we do it, but the effective will be how correct we do it.
Well, thank you very much, Miss Karen. I felt so connected to you and what you were in fact saying. I really would want this conversation to go on for a long, long period, because we have a lot to say about that. This whole idea that Miss Karen mentioned about change, it reminds me of this old blues singer Sam Cooke that says a change has got to come. No, we don't have all the time that we need, so we have to basically bring the program to a close. So, as a sort of a closing comment, I'd like to pose this question to all of you, and that is this, right? What do you think is specific one specific thing that we can do, right, to make our higher education system even more resilient, even more robust than it currently is? What is one thing that we can do to bring about the kind of changes that Dr. Martinez has alluded to? We want to start with our provost. One thing.
Well, Dr. Barrow, I've been thinking about this and I had a bunch of answers, a list of things that I could say. But after hearing Dr. Karen Martinez, of whom I'm most proud, say things, echo things like students, we have to put the students at the center, and talking about the whole concept of planned chaos or bounded instability. I am going to say the one thing that we ought to do, and I'm bearing in mind that Dr. Thompson said that ATLIB is an organization with a lot of power, with a lot of, we can do so much, and we aren't. I think that ATLIB needs to step up to the plate, and it needs to have these conversations. This is ATLIB's role. We should be advocating more heavily. We should be advocating that with the government of Belize, that we must be a part of the conversation for national development. If we are to inject quality and greater access for students into the system, if we are to rationalize the programs that we ought to be offering. I heard this afternoon the alarming statistics that of the educated workforce, 86% of the Belize's educated university education or tertiary level education workforce, 86% of them has a business administration degree. Do we know? Are we aware of that statistic? Do we, as higher education providers, do we know what the labor market actually needs? We've been recently been consulted, but as we plan our programs and services that we offer our students, do we know really what Belize needs? And we have to be, through the work that we're doing, we are the drivers of national development. It breaks my heart every time that there's a consultancy that's being offered that's for hundreds of thousands of US dollars. It goes outside the country because we're not producing supposedly the people that we need in this country. So we as an organization need to stand up and say to the government of Belize, we are your partners in national development and we need to be consulted. Tell us what you need and let us talk about how together we can work with you. We need to advocate that there is an investment in higher education, that that structure those structures and the governance structures that we need to ensure that there is quality and that there's access. And not only that we create, that we put us, when we by access, that we open a door and allow a student to enter. Access means that we provide everything that that student needs to succeed at our institution. And not only succeed at our institution, but that they succeed and that they can succeed and hold their own against anybody else within the region. So we need to be a part of the process. We need to demand it. We need to show the government of Belize that we are capable and that we need the investment, that we need to, it might mean that tuition needs to increase, but we cannot run our institutions on $29 or $30 a credit hour that we were charging back in 1995 or 1990. Things have look at the textbooks that we have to use. The technology that we need to provide, We are living in a digital age. We need to digitize our systems. We need to be producing people who can analyze statistics, who can work in this digital world. And it's not just giving them a computer and access to the internet and turning on Google Classroom. There's a lot more to it than that. So by the one single thing, ATLIB needs to stand up and say, we are the leaders in higher education and we want to work with you, and we require that you work with us and that you invest in this system, that you create the governance structures. We will work with you on it. We will work with you in the medium term, the short term and the medium term and the long term development strategy. That when you travel the world or whatever and you ask for funding for this program and that program, you include funding, the requisite funding for programs and services that our institutions will do that will make the roads, help us to build better roads, help us to produce better caregivers, and so on and so on. That's the one thing. ATLIB must step up to the plate. And I'm a strong advocate for ATLIB.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Aird. Dr. Martinez, this idea of planned chaos. What is one thing, Dr. Martinez, that we could do to have more planned chaos in our higher education system and bring about the kind of changes that you envision?
Okay. There are many forms of planned chaos. I can start off from inside the classroom. When we look at our statistics at the higher education level, we have a lot of dropouts. Like many of our students, most of us would not be able to boast that we have 90% retention. We would be probably 60, 70, etc. And we ask ourselves, why? Our students, as I've mentioned earlier, especially those who are born into this fast system, like technology, they are looking for something that is relevant. And relevance in the society right now is being able to get something from higher education, spend your money, and see the value. It's no longer you educate yourself and like in 10 years after, you find a job that fits what you have educated yourself like 10 years ago. Our new students want that now. So in the classroom, we need to also be able to serve them. And I'm not saying that we kind of lower our standard, but we serve them within the context that they are comfortable, because we can't be serving them in our context. That's another story that I usually tell educators. For example, you can't be talking to students about when you did not have the electricity and how you did whatever. They have the electricity, so they might not be able to relate properly, except if you move further and take them into like some kind of experience. So what is planned chaos? With the affordance of technology, our students in some cases know more than us. So they can surf the net, but we have to challenge them to serve it in a way that will be productive and it will result in learning. So you can go into the classroom as a teacher and you allow the student to teach you something that you do not know. And using a simple example, most of our students know how to use different social media. So allow that student to teach you along with the other students in the class. Allow that student to be you for a chance, for a little time. And you will find out that in allowing that student, so it's like planned chaos because we are not comfortable, like probably letting our students know that there are some things we do not know. I have seen that all my years in education. It's hard for an educator to tell his or her student that, oh, I am sorry, you were right. So we have to be able to now, in this day where they are comfortable, allow them to teach us. And that in itself is like planned chaos. Because you have the pedagogy, you have the structure, you have the know-how. They just have the time, the era. So use that to your advantage to reach to them the proper way. That would be one good example I'm using in the classroom. And likewise, we are used to giving tests where students are like getting rote, like the rote memorization and the usual comfort where you have multiple choice, you have short answer, you have fill in the blanks. Let them build something. Let them create something. Something from nothing, but something that will be assessment as learning. Because we are assessing always for learning. But we need to assess as learning. And that has to include the student. The student becoming the creator in your classroom. Yes, from our perspective, that's planned chaos because we are not used to that.
Well, thank you very much, Miss Karen. Finally, Dr. Thompson, right? What can we do to end this learned helplessness that is occurring in our higher education system, as Dr. Martinez have described it? Um, what is one thing you think that we could do to improve the quality of higher education in the country?
Um, After listening to Karen and after listening to Eve, I right on the spot coined this, and I'm calling it strategic collaboration. Strategic collaboration using some of the points that Eve raised with ATLIB and what ATLIB can do, the points that Karen raised, and I will tell you what I mean here. One, we have all of these entities, and I will say to you that after I spoke to Doran about doing this podcast, I actually went to the Ministry of Education's website from 2003 and I pulled down all of the data on enrollment at the junior colleges at UB. I'm not sure, I don't think Galen and other universities are in the picture, but the picture is showing that in terms of access, a lot of our females or the majority of our students enrolled are females. At UB, it's 60 to 65% female. In the junior colleges, it's between 55 and 60%. Overall, it's between 60 and 62% female.
That's right.
Pointing to what Karen is saying. So how are we reaching out? One, to the females who are in our schools, and then two, to the males who are not in the classroom. What are we doing about the males who are not in the system any at all, and how can we draw them into the system? In terms of looking at quality, strategic collaboration, we have a system of people who have expertise in all different areas, but they are located all across our country. This is where technology comes in, Karen. Why is it not possible for somebody employed at your institution to work with Eve, or for somebody at Eve's institution to collaborate with yours?
They do.
And I mean strategic, structured collaboration. So we know there is a way of it happening. So if Karen wants to work with another institution, it can happen. with ministry. Eve spoke to the whole idea of consultancy money floating out of Belize, strategic collaboration in addressing the needs of the Ministry of Education for information that comes out of research into the different sectors. If the money is available, why is there not a collaboration between faculty members at the various institutions in vying for that money and offering for the ministry information on that area of the sector, or the area within the sector that they want to find information? Why is that not possible? The I talk about the sharing of faculty, the shared delivery of programs. That I think Eve is saying is happening. If I'm not running a program, but I have students located in my environment, why is it not possible, for example, Karen, if a student from CJC is living in Sand Creek and doing the teacher ed program, why is that possible for somebody from your institution to supervise that person, and how will it happen? If you have shared collaboration and you have a system for how it operates, I think we can benefit from the strengths at each of the different institutions, right? And AtLib, I think, is one of the answers. One of the answers, I think. AtLib can help to address that, because inside AtLib you can set up those structures where if we want this to happen, this is how it happens. So it is not sort of willy-nilly, or as Mr. Bennett said, there's no system to it, right? How does it operate? How does a faculty member benefit from collaborating with somebody else, somebody in another institution? You might start to look at it and say in finance and stuff like that, right? So to me, strategic collaboration would help to address some of the problems, and the whole when I saw the male-female divide in enrollment in higher ed, I was kind of alarmed, because I did a quick Google search and I noticed that in terms of, they call it the gross enrollment rate at higher ed in Belize is 19% females and 20-something% male. 19% males and 23 or something like that percent females. So it did corroborate what I found in the ministry data, that there are more females participating in higher ed than there are males. And it's beginning, Eve, in this month of this Women's Month, it's beginning to show. We have a female Governor General. We have a female Speaker of the House. We have a female President of the Senate. We have a female Acting Chief Justice. You see, it's beginning to show. It's beginning to show. Now we only have a few females in the House of Representatives, and I think we have to start working on that. But at the same time, I'm not saying, okay, yeah, we have achieved something. What I'm saying is our males are lagging behind, and we know that there's a social problem that we have. We have to address that matter. The matter of our males not participating. Why is it? Is it that we are not making tertiary education attractive enough for them? How can we make our programs more attractive? Speaks to the point that Karen was making about what happens in the classroom. So in my view, and you said one thing, I call it strategic collaboration.
Strategic collaboration, planned chaos, learned helplessness. These are some of the ideas that have been tossed around in this initial conversation. I wish we had more time, but we don't. Right? So I would like to, on behalf of our marketing director, Mrs. Deanna Perry-Feet, and the whole marketing team, James, Mr. Powers, and of course, on behalf of the provost, who happens to be our guest tonight, I'd like to thank you, ladies, for sharing your view on this very, very, very important topic of the state of higher education in Belize. I have learned a lot, and I hope that our audience have also learned a lot from this conversation. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And Belize, thank you for allowing us in your lives today and for the last 8 weeks. Thank you, and we see you again soon. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you very much.